All right, let's jump into another deep dive. Today, we're going to be tackling, staying calm in intense situations. And to help us with that, we're going to be looking at a motivational video by Jocko Willink.
Oh yeah, Jocko, that former Navy SEAL guy?
Yeah, exactly. He's kind of become a bit of a leadership guru.
Yeah.
And he starts off with this story from his SEAL training
Okay.
about what he calls the classic team guy overcorrection.
Interesting. What's that all about?
Well, basically, when he would give trainees feedback, they'd often go way too far in the other direction.
I see. So like an overreaction to the feedback.
Yeah, exactly. Like he gives examples of trainees who would be too passive, then suddenly become like super aggressive. Or they'd go from simple plans to like crazy complex strategies.
Ah, so it's like they're trying to implement the feedback, but they kind of miss the mark.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of us can relate to that, even outside of, the
Oh,
military.
for sure.
I mean, have you ever like gotten feedback about needing more detail in your reports and then suddenly you're writing like a novel for every little task?
Oh, absolutely. It's so easy to like overcompensate when you're trying to improve.
Right. It's like that saying, course correction can sometimes turn into a wild swerve.
Ah,
That's a good one.
but it's not just about, leadership or work, is it?
Mm.
I mean, this whole idea of overreacting seems pretty universal.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Like it's just part of being human,
Like
right?
we feel surprised or stressed, that whole fight or flight response kicks in.
Right.
And then we often overreact before we've even had a chance to like process what's actually happening.
Yeah, it's like our brains are wired to jump to extremes, you know?
So it's not just SEAL trainees struggling with this.
No, not at all.
I mean, think about it. How many times have you seen someone completely lose it over something small?
Yeah, like what?
I don't know, like a spilled coffee or a traffic jam. Oh yeah, all the time. And it's not because those things are like huge problems. It's
Mhm.
because our initial reactions are driven by, our emotions instead of logic.
Hmm.
We don't really take the time to like step back and see things rationally.
And Willink actually has this military saying that I think is perfect here.
Okay.
The first report from the battlefield is always wrong.
Ooh, I like that one.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's not just talking about literal battlefields,
Right.
It's about realizing that in any situation, that initial burst of information you get,
Hmm.
it's often incomplete or even distorted.
I see.
Like think about you hear some gossip or you see a crazy headline.
Mm-hmm.
Your first reaction might be like shock or anger
Right.
or even like excitement.
Yeah, yeah.
But how often does that initial reaction turn out to be wrong once you actually get the full picture?
All the time. It's so easy to get swept up in that first wave of emotion.
Yeah.
And then, you make decisions based on bad information.
And it's not just external news either, right?
No.
Like I've definitely misread emails or text messages
Yeah, yeah.
and gone down this whole rabbit hole in my head, only to realize later that I was totally off base.
It happens to the best of us.
It really just shows how important it is to, like, pause,
Yeah.
take a breath, and remind ourselves that, our initial perception might not be the whole truth.
It's like you got to cultivate that critical thinking.
Exactly.
Ask questions and get more information before you jump to conclusions.
And that brings us back to Willink's point about purposing.
Purposing.
He
Okay.
used this analogy of a diving rig that's constantly overcorrecting, like going too deep,
Yeah.
then too shallow, and never finding the right spot.
So it's like we're on this emotional roller coaster,
Yeah.
constantly reacting and overcorrecting,
Yeah.
and in the end, we're just exhausted and nowhere near where we need to be.
So how do we get off that roller coaster?
Right? Like, what's the key to finding that balance?
Well, Willink really emphasizes emotional regulation. It's
Yeah.
not about like suppressing your emotions. It's about
Yeah.
recognizing them and choosing how you respond instead of just reacting impulsively.
It sounds simple enough, but I bet it's a lot harder to actually do.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like easier said than done.
Definitely. It's a skill you have to practice.
Yeah.
It's about building that awareness of your emotional patterns and developing strategies to, manage them.
And this is where I think Willink's own experiences are really interesting.
Okay, how so?
He talks about how he learned to detach from those knee-jerk emotional reactions.
I see. Like not letting them control him.
Right, and he tells this crazy story about SEAL training where they'd be underwater, completely tangled in their gear.
Oh.
And the key to survival was staying calm, even in that terrifying situation.
That's intense.
Right. It really highlights how crucial it is to be able to, like, regulate your emotions when the stakes are high.
But it applies to everyday life too, right?
Absolutely. Like dealing with a difficult client
Yeah.
or a family conflict or even just being stuck in traffic. That ability to detach from the initial emotional surge can make a huge difference in how you handle things.
It's like he's saying that staying composed under pressure is a superpower.
Yeah.
It's finding that inner strength to be calm, even when everything around you feels chaotic.
And Willink even suggests that this detachment and calm lead to a sense of inner peace.
Interesting.
He's basically saying that learning to manage your reactions can actually lead to a deeper sense of well-being.
Which I think is a really powerful message, especially in today's world.
Right, where everything is demanding our attention and pushing our buttons all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
It really makes you wonder, how do you define peace in your own life?
Yeah, that's a good question.
And how do you cultivate that peace, especially when things get tough?
It's different for everyone, but I think it's about finding that stillness, that sense of like being grounded even when everything around you is crazy.
So we've explored this, this tendency to overreact, both in extreme situations like SEAL training and also just in everyday life. And we've talked about the importance of recognizing those emotional triggers and choosing to respond instead of just reacting.
Right. And we've touched on the power of emotional regulation,
Yes.
that ability to detach from those knee-jerk reactions and find a more balanced approach.
Now, there's another really interesting point that Willink makes that I think deserves its own discussion.
Okay, what's that?
He talks about how his views on emotional control and what it means to be cool under pressure
Yeah.
have like evolved over time.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Early in his SEAL career, he used to think that anyone who showed, strong emotions in a stressful situation was weak.
Yeah, I can see that.
He even like used the word idiot at one point to describe him.
Wow, it's pretty harsh.
Yeah, definitely sounds like that, tough guy SEAL mentality.
Yeah.
But then he says he realized something pretty profound.
Oh, okay. What was that?
It wasn't that the truly effective leaders never felt fear or anger or frustration. It was that they had a different relationship with those emotions.
So, like, they weren't immune to those feelings, they just handled them differently.
Yeah, exactly. They were able to acknowledge those emotions, but not be, like, totally controlled by them.
I see.
They had this awareness of what was going on inside, both for themselves and for the people around them.
Right.
And that allowed them to stay calm and make good decisions, even in the most chaotic situations.
So it wasn't about suppressing emotions completely,
Right.
but more about being able to step back and observe them without letting them dictate your actions.
It's like that that metaphor of the rider and the elephant.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that one.
The elephant represents our emotions, powerful and unpredictable. And the rider is our rational mind trying to, like, steer the elephant in the right direction.
I love that analogy because it really captures that feeling of, like, being pulled in different directions.
Right. And it shows how much skill it takes to, like, guide those emotions without being totally overwhelmed by them.
And it ties back to what we were saying about emotional regulation.
Yeah.
It's not about pretending we don't have feelings.
Right.
It's about developing that muscle.
Yeah.
That ability to notice those feelings without letting them run the show.
And Willink actually uses an example from his SEAL training to illustrate that.
Ah, okay. Which one?
Remember the story about being underwater, tangled in gear,
Yeah.
and how some guys would panic while others would stay calm and methodical?
Oh, right. Yeah.
It's such a clear example of the difference between reacting and responding.
For sure.
In that situation, like, panicking could kill you.
Yeah.
But the guys who could regulate their emotions, they had a much better chance of survival.
And that same principle applies to so many other areas of life.
Absolutely.
I mean, whether you're dealing with a work deadline or a conflict with someone you love or even just a frustrating commute.
Yeah.
That ability to stay composed can make all the difference.
It's almost like he's saying that emotional regulation is like the key to unlocking our potential,
Yeah, I can see that.
both as individuals and as leaders.
Right. When we're able to manage our inner world, it creates more space for, clear thinking and problem solving.
Yeah, and even for connecting with other people.
Exactly.
And Willink even suggests that this detachment from those from those immediate emotional reactions leads to a sense of inner peace.
Interesting.
He talks about how, even though he's achieved a lot of outward success,
Yeah.
his true sense of peace comes from looking back at his younger self and seeing how far he's come.
So it's not just about like external achievements, it's about that inner journey of growth and resilience.
He actually talks about looking back at himself as a
Right.
like as a young boy struggling with stuttering and other challenges,
Oh.
and feeling this sense of peace, knowing that he overcame all of that.
It's inspiring to see how he connects his personal journey to this idea of finding peace within the struggle.
Right. It's about recognizing that the challenges we face, those battles we fight,
Yeah.
they're often the very things that shape us and help us grow.
It's in those moments of adversity that we like discover our strength and resilience.
And it makes me think about how we often judge others without knowing their full story.
Mm-hmm.
Willink
Wow.
makes a point of saying that we should be careful about making assumptions about people based on their reactions
Right.
because we never really know what they've been through.
Oh, what battles they're fighting right
Yeah,
now.
exactly. That's a call for empathy and understanding.
Yeah.
We're all on our own unique journeys.
Mm-hmm.
And what might look like an overreaction to one person
Mm-hmm.
could be someone else's, hard-won progress.
That's a good point.
So we've explored Willink's evolving perspective on emotional control
Yep.
and how it relates to, leadership and decision-making
Mm-hmm.
and even finding peace in challenging situations.
We've talked about the power of emotional regulation.
Yes.
And how it can help us navigate the ups and downs of life.
With more grace and resilience.
And we've touched on the importance of self-awareness,
Right.
both in terms of understanding our own emotional patterns
Mm-hmm.
and also extending compassion to others who might be, struggling with their own internal battles.
Now, there's one final point that Willink makes that I think really brings it all together.
Okay, let's hear it.
He talks about how finding that inner peace
Mm-hmm.
isn't really a passive thing.
Yeah.
It's not about, sitting on a mountaintop and meditating all day.
Yeah, I can see that.
For him, it's more about actively engaging in the battle.
So what does that mean exactly?
Well, he's talking about that constant struggle to improve yourself,
Okay.
to overcome challenges,
Mm-hmm.
to become a better version of yourself.
Like it's a continuous process,
Yeah, exactly.
not just a one-time thing.
Right. And he even says that finding peace within that battle is what keeps you motivated and fulfilled.
Yeah, interesting.
So it's not about reaching some end goal
Right.
or achieving like perfect zen or something.
Yeah.
It's more about finding satisfaction in the process itself.
So the striving, the overcoming, the constant evolution.
Exactly.
It reminds me of that quote from Theodore Roosevelt.
Okay.
The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood.
Ooh, yeah, that's a good one.
It's about having the courage to show up and put in the work,
Yeah.
to embrace those challenges,
Mhm.
knowing that the struggle itself is where we find meaning.
And I think that's such a powerful message for all of us.
Yeah, I agree.
No matter what battle we're facing,
Right.
whether it's work or family or just trying to be a better person.
Mm.
It's that willingness to engage, to push ourselves that really leads to growth.
And it's not about seeking external validation either, right?
Yeah, not at all.
It's about that inner satisfaction that comes from knowing you're giving it your all.
It's like peace isn't the destination.
Mm.
It's the fuel that keeps us moving forward.
Yeah, and it's a journey that never really ends, does it?
No, there's always a new challenge, a new obstacle.
And a new opportunity for growth, right?
Exactly. It's like that saying, a smooth sea never made a skilled sailor.
Oh, I like that one.
It's the challenges, the storms, that make us adapt and learn and become more resilient.
And that brings us back to where we started, this
Yeah.
whole idea of overreaction.
Mm-hmm.
When we can find that peace within the battle,
Yeah.
regulate our emotions,
Right.
we're much better equipped to handle those challenges.
Without being totally derailed by them.
It's not about avoiding the storms altogether. It's
no.
about learning to weather them.
With more grace and composure.
And maybe even finding a little bit of joy in the process.
Yeah, exactly. It's about realizing that the storms are just part of the journey.
Mm-hmm.
And by embracing them, we can come out stronger on the other side.
Stronger, wiser, and more at peace with ourselves.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today in this deep dive into Jocko Willink's philosophy.
Yeah, we've explored a lot.
We've talked about overreaction, emotional regulation, leadership, and finding peace within the battle.
We've also talked about self-awareness, managing our emotions, and the idea that, true fulfillment comes from embracing the whole journey.
We hope this deep dive has given you something to think about.
Yeah, and maybe even inspired you to look at your own challenges a little differently.
Remember, it's not about being perfectly calm or
Yeah.
avoiding all challenges.
Yeah.
It's about showing up, putting in the work, and finding that peace that helps you navigate life's ups and downs.
With more resilience, grace, and maybe even a little bit of humor.
And who knows, maybe in our next deep dive, we'll explore some other interesting perspectives on finding meaning and purpose in the midst of all the chaos. That sounds good. Until then, keep diving deep, stay curious, and remember, the battle is where we find our strength.